welcome. Thank you all for coming. They didn't mention this in the introduction, but this actually sold out faster than any other Times Talk event, including when Bono was here. Now, most of you, of course, know Daniel from the Harry Potter films, but in less than 2 weeks, you will, or just over 2 weeks, you will make your Broadway debut in Equus, in a role that you played in the West End in London.
Yes.
How does Broadway feel different to you?
It's kind of, I went to the Tony Awards in, what was that, June, I guess, yeah. And it was amazing because everybody was so welcoming and just kind of lovely, and they were just really, there was a genuine sense of excitement about the show coming. So it was, really, it was great for me to see that. And so far it's been great to work with, Broadway actors and me, because I've never really worked with American actors before, and so that's been a new experience, which I worked with Kim Cattrall on My Boy Jack, and then, this whole other cast, and it's great. So, yeah, so far it's been really, really good, and it's kind of just great being in that area, and you get a real sense of history with Broadway. And I've always, because my mum and dad were actors when they were younger, and whenever we'd be on long car rides, I'd just be listening to show tunes for the whole time. And so it was mainly Chicago, which used to terrify me, actually. It was like, for an 8-year-old boy, the kind of overt sexuality of that show is really daunting. And then, so it was Chicago Company, which is my favourite musical, and I don't know what other things were. There was stuff like Follies and Sondheim mainly, and so so I would listen to all of that, and so to suddenly be on the same stages as or the same area as all those shows were put on is a real it's a thrill.
Do you remember what your first Broadway show was?
I think it actually may well have been Chicago a few years later.
I guess it wasn't that scary.
It wasn't. It was delightful when I was 14. It had just been a bit scary when I was 8, but then by that point I was pubescent, so it was all wonderful.
One of the most interesting things about your career is that you started out mainly in films, and now you're doing a lot of theater, whereas most young actors are forced to do theater to prove that they're good actors, and they become big movie stars, which you've already done. So why did you want to do theater?
I think no matter which order you do it in, theatre is the thing that, even though it's not necessarily the right way to judge somebody, because you can get somebody who's a truly brilliant actor who'll never do a play in their life, but is still a brilliant actor just because they've worked in film. But somehow, in the eyes of a lot of people, theatre will just legitimises you, and you're proper once you've done theatre, and so and it was partly the attraction of proving it to myself that I was good enough to do it, and also it was a whole new set of challenges you meet with theatre, because you have to be able to project and do all those kind of things, and I think a lot of movie actors possibly don't take that into consideration, but because both my parents, as I said, had been actors, they both said to me, you really have to do a lot of work before you go on there. So I trained for about 18 months before I did it, and it paid dividends in the end. So yeah.
So how did you train?
I trained with, there's a vocal coach called Barbara Houseman in London, and I just worked with her for about a year and a half. And it was great, and it was really difficult at first, and you do the first 2 months and you're just thinking, oh God, I'm never going to be able to do this, and you're coming from the Harry Potter films, you're so aware that there will be a certain person, like quite a few people they're going to be watching for mistakes. I think from the beginning, some people, and so it was a real relief to know that I was actually good enough. And actually, Thea Sharrock, our director, who's directing the Broadway production as well, obviously, and she was brilliant. And I remember looking around the room when I was in the rehearsal room, and it was Thea and Richard Griffiths and John Napier and David Hersey and all these amazing people who've had these incredible careers. And I just remember thinking, well, if I'm going to screw up, I couldn't be screwing up with better people around me. So you play the percentages in that way, I guess. And also I just wanted, the other reason, I mean, the most simple and most and the truest reason for doing it, not that I've just lied to you in what I've said, but is the fact that it's a great play, and how old was I when it was like, I guess I was 15 when it started, you know, we started thinking maybe it would be a possibility later on. Any boy gets given the chance to play that part in that play, directed by Thea and with Richard, you know, you'd be a fool to say no.
This show, of course, for those of you who are familiar with it, I hope all of you are, did provoke some shocked reaction after it was in London. Did that surprise you, or were you completely braced for that, coming from, you know, parents who are in the business?
The weird thing was that all the shock came before it opened. it kind of, as soon as it opened, everyone kind of went, oh, it's actually rather good. But before it opened, everyone was sort of like, certain people were saying, oh, you know, it's a terrible mistake for him to do it. You know, offended mothers calling up and things. And sort of think, well,
calling up who?
Calling up various newspapers and saying you shouldn't be doing this, and you know, we're not going to go and see it. And you think, well, okay, don't. If you don't like it, then you don't have to see it. But yeah, no, so it did get a bit of a reaction. But I was kind of... And also, the bizarre thing was, everyone was treating it like it was pornographic. And it's really not. It's 7 minutes at the end of the play. Don't just come in for that bit. and so it's sort of, you know, it's like... You know, it kind of was very confusing, because like, when people were writing about it negatively, you did get a sense that they hadn't necessarily read it.
But that was all before, and then the reviews were wonderful.
And they kind of really liked it, thank God. and it went down really, really well. And then there were some people doing very, very speedy and abrupt U-turns. But but then over here, I think there was, I don't know, but I think it was a bit of an outcry because when I did it in England, I was under 18. But I was still over the age of consent in England, but I wasn't in America, so there was a bit of a shock reaction over here, I heard. Is that true?
To some extent, but you're 19 now, right?
I'm 19 now.
You're
so
okay.
Yeah.
You still can't have a drink here, technically.
No, I know. No, I know. Yeah.
Just water. So, how did you think...
That's a terrible joke. I hate myself for even doing that. I thought you shouldn't have laughed at that. That was really bad.